The glass shattered before anyone realized what had happened. A loud crash cut through the hum of dinner chatter, making heads turn in sharp unison. Every eye in the upscale Manhattan restaurant locked onto a single table, where the tension in the air was thicker than the velvet drapes that hung heavy against the tall windows. Some felt the chill of dominance radiating from one man. Others sensed injustice so sharp it scraped against the room's nerves like broken glass across stone. And at the center of it all sat Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, expression unreadable but dangerous in its calm. The restaurant smelled of charred steak and truffle oil, the air dense with the mix of wealth and entitlement. Silver forks stilled in trembling hands. Even the faint jazz music trickling from hidden speakers seemed to suffocate under the sudden silence. Across the table, Jay-Z leaned back slowly, his gaze cool but heavy, as though he already knew this night would not end clean. His fingers tapped a rhythm on the table's edge, controlled, deliberate, like a man waiting for a storm he'd already predicted. The storm had a name, and right now it was dressed in a waiter's uniform. Waiter. What's wrong? You can't afford to pay the bill, Mr. Jackson? The words dripped with venom, each syllable louder than it needed to be. Gasps rippled across the room. A few phones tilted upward, recording. Some pretended not to watch, but every neck craned just slightly, the way humans do when they smell blood in the air. 50 Cent didn't move. He sat still, shoulders squared, hands clasped loosely in front of him. His silence made the waiter bolder. Waiter. Thought so. Big shot rapper. But maybe the money's all in your lyrics, huh? A smirk pulled at the corner of his mouth, as if he had been waiting years for this exact moment. He leaned closer, his breath thick with cigarettes and cheap gum. The heat in the room shifted. Some diners were red-faced with secondhand embarrassment, others alive with curiosity, waiting to see if 50 Cent would explode like the persona he carried in every song, every headline. But 50 didn't flinch. Not yet. Jay-Z finally spoke, voice deep, almost casual, but lined with steel. Jay-Z, you sure you want to finish that sentence? The waiter blinked, faltering for a second, but the intoxication of an audience pushed him forward. His tray tilted as he planted it firmly against the table's edge, metal clattering against glassware. Waiter, why not? Everyone knows the truth. Guys like him. He stopped. Not because he wanted to. Because 50 Cent moved. Slow, deliberate, like a panther uncoiling from stillness. His chair scraped back, the sound sharp and final against the marble floor. He rose to his full height, shoulders casting a long shadow under the chandelier. For a moment, even the waiter's bravado cracked, though he tried to cover it with a scoff. The room had gone quiet again, suffocatingly so. Even the smell of seared garlic felt invasive, intrusive, against the tension clawing at the walls. 50's voice came low, almost too soft to hear, yet slicing through the silence like a blade. 50. Cent. You don't know me. No anger, no raised volume. Just a cold fact that landed harder than any threat. Jay-Z's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Curtis the way a chess player studies the board before moving a piece. He didn't intervene yet. He didn't need to. Not when the weight of what was unsaid hung heavier than what had been spoken. Somewhere in the back, a wine glass toppled, the sound too fragile for a moment so brutal. The waiter laughed nervously, shaking his head. Waiter. Relax, man. Just a joke. But nobody was laughing. Not a single diner. Not a single voice. The joke had curdled into something darker, something irreversible. And then came the whisper. Not from the waiter, not from Jay-Z. From a corner table where someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. Voice. Guess the tough guy is broke. It spread like fire, the kind of whisper that feeds on shame. Chuckles followed. The waiter's grin returned, wider, crueler, as if the room itself had chosen sides. Jay-Z finally set his glass down with a soft clink. The sound was almost ceremonial. Jay-Z, Curtis? That single word carried weight, a warning, a reminder, perhaps even a plea. But 50 Cent wasn't looking at Jay-Z anymore. His gaze locked onto the waiter, eyes flat and unblinking. The kind of stare that wasn't anger. It was a calculation, cold, methodical, as though he wasn't deciding if something would happen, but when. The waiter swallowed. His smirk faltered for the briefest second, but he forced it back, gripping the tray tighter, knuckles white. Waiter. What? Gonna hit me? Go ahead. Everyone's watching. He was right. They were. Phones tilted higher, screens glowing, hungry for spectacle. Jay-Z exhaled slowly, the faintest shake of his head. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't just a spat. This wasn't just about pride or insult. Something deeper was brewing, hidden beneath the surface. Because 50 Cent's expression didn't show humiliation, it didn't show rage. It showed something far more unsettling, restraint. And restraint always meant there was more to come. The silence stretched, the air heavier with every heartbeat, until finally, 50 Cent. You just made a choice you can't take back. The words weren't shouted, they were delivered like a sentence, final, absolute. The waiter blinked, confused. The audience shifted, murmurs rising. But Jay-Z leaned forward, voice steady, as though he already understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. Jay-Z, and now, we see where it takes you. The scene froze in tension, the restaurant holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would ignite the night into something none of them could forget. The waiter didn't back down. If anything, he leaned in further, emboldened by the glow of recording phones and the silent audience feeding on the tension. His lips curled into a sneer, and he tapped the bill folder against the polished table like a gavel. Waiter. Choice? Please. The only choice here is whether you finally admit you're just another washed-up rapper living off hype. The words carried. The diners winced collectively, some lowering their eyes, others staring with predatory fascination. The insult wasn't just disrespect. It was humiliation delivered in front of Jay-Z, the one man in the industry whose presence magnified every ounce of shame. Jay-Z didn't move, but his silence was dangerous. He studied the waiter like he was watching a pawn sacrifice itself. 50 Cent's jaw shifted slightly, a flex beneath the skin, but instead of erupting, he lowered himself back into his chair. Slow, calculated. The scrape of the chair echoed like thunder in the still room. His composure unsettled everyone more than violence ever could. 50 Cent. If you think this is about money, you don't understand money. The waiter laughed sharply, a brittle sound, like glass breaking under strain. Waiter. Oh, I understand plenty. Guys like you flash chains, talk tough, and think the world owes you respect. But the second someone calls you out, you hide behind that fake calm. Jay-Z finally spoke, his tone low but laced with weight. Jay-Z, you should stop. The room shifted again. Jay-Z's voice wasn't loud, but it carried a warning the waiter ignored. His pride was too intoxicated by the eyes on him, the power of holding the floor. Waiter. Funny. The legend himself stepping in. What's the matter, Jay? Scared your boy here will fold in front of you. A ripple of shock swept across the diners. Some audibly gasped. The audacity was staggering. Jay-Z chuckled once, humorless, shaking his head slowly as if he had already written the ending of this night in his mind. Jay-Z, you don't even know the game you're playing. The waiter pressed forward. His tray rattled against the table, and a bead of sweat finally broke across his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. Waiter, game? No, this is real life. And in real life, the world finally gets to see you. 50's hand moved. Not fast, not violent, just a simple reach across the table, fingers brushing the bill folder, pulling it toward himself. He opened it. A single slip of paper fluttered out, sliding across the linen. It wasn't the check. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in ink, folded twice. The kind of thing that didn't belong in a restaurant, the kind of thing nobody expected. The waiter froze, confusion breaking through his arrogance. Waiter, what's that? 50 Cent's eyes never left his. His voice, steady, cut deeper than any insult. 50 Cent, something you shouldn't have seen. The tension fractured into chaos. Murmurs exploded around the room. Phones zoomed in, screens glowing brighter. The waiter snatched the note instinctively, unfolding it with shaky hands. His bravado faltered as his eyes darted across the words. His lips moved silently, reading something no one else could see. And then, his face drained of color. Jay-Z's gaze sharpened. Jay-Z, now, you've gone too far? Waiter, what? What is this? His voice cracked, no longer confident, no longer loud, just a man suddenly aware he had stepped into something bigger than his ego. 50 leaned back, arms folding across his chest, watching the waiter unravel. 50 Cent. Choices have consequences. You opened something that wasn't yours to open. The crowd leaned forward, sensing a shift. Curiosity burned hotter now, louder than their initial hunger for spectacle. What could be on that note? What secret had the waiter stumbled into? The waiter slammed the paper against the table, desperate to regain footing. Waiter, this doesn't mean anything, it's just words. Jay-Z tilted his head, eyes glinting with something between disappointment and pity. Jay-Z, you still don't get it. Some words weigh more than gold, and you just threw them into a room full of wolves. The waiter's breathing quickened. His arrogance was gone, replaced by confusion and the creeping edge of fear. He tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Waiter, fine, then tell everyone. If it's so heavy, tell them. 50 Cent didn't answer. Instead, he reached across the table again, pulling the note back. But not before dozens of phones had already captured it, frozen in pixels. The damage was done. Whispers escalated into full conversations around the room. Diners leaned toward each other, speculating wildly. Diner Copter 1, did you see it? Diner 2, no, what was written? Diner 3, whatever it is, it shook him. Look at his face. The waiter's hands trembled. Sweat rolled down his temple. His earlier dominance had bled out into fragility, and the crowd smelled it. Predators always do. Jay-Z leaned in, his words deliberate, final. Jay-Z, this isn't about a bill. This isn't about respect. It's about what happens when you cross into business that's not yours. The waiter tried to speak but choked on his breath. He backed up, tray clattering against a nearby chair. His eyes darted around the room, desperate for someone to take his side. But the crowd wasn't with him anymore. They were against him, waiting, hungry, watching him unravel. 50 Cent finally broke his silence with a line that carved itself into every recording phone, every watching mind. 50 Cent, you wanted attention. Now you've got it. Let's see how you carry it. The words landed heavy, like a curse. The waiter's knees nearly buckled under the weight of being exposed, even if no one yet understood what he'd seen. The restaurant was no longer just a restaurant. It was an arena. And the crowd wasn't eating dinner anymore. They were eating him. The conflict was no longer just between a celebrity and a waiter. It had become a war of perception, of secrets dangled and not explained. And every second of silence dragged the waiter deeper into a pit he couldn't escape. And still, 50 Cent sat calm, watching, waiting. Because this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of the reckoning. The restaurant had transformed into a coliseum. The clink of silverware was gone. Even the low jazz had been silenced, as if the air itself knew this night was no longer ordinary. All that remained was the sound of hushed voices, the shuffle of feet, and the glow of dozens of phones capturing every second. The waiter clutched the crumpled note in his shaking hand, his earlier arrogance dissolving into frantic confusion. His throat worked, dry, as if the words on the page had drained every drop of moisture from his body. Waiter. This can't be real. Jay-Z's eyes followed him, unblinking, his calm so steady it almost felt like mockery. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low but sharp. Jay-Z, real enough to break you in front of the world. The waiter spun toward him, desperate. Waiter, then tell them. If it's so dangerous, if it's so important, then say it. Or, he stopped. His voice betrayed him, breaking under the pressure, the eyes, the cameras, the unspoken judgment pressing against his chest. It was suffocating. 50 Cent hadn't moved. His silence was thunder. His stare, unrelenting. The calmness in his body language was more terrifying than anger. It wasn't the posture of a man cornered. It was the posture of a man who had already decided how this would end. Diner, whispering loudly, "What's written on it?" The whisper ignited the crowd. Murmurs exploded, overlapping, a frenzy of speculation. Fingers pointed, voices rose. The once elegant restaurant now resembled a courtroom, the waiter standing trial under the gaze of strangers. The waiter's hands trembled harder. He waved the note wildly in the air, trying to regain control. Waiter. It's just a trick. That's all it is. Some celebrity stunt to keep people talking. Jay-Z smirked faintly, his voice carrying a dark edge. Jay-Z. If it's a stunt, why are you sweating like your life depends on it? The crowd reacted, gasps, laughter, even applause from a corner table. The waiter's face flushed crimson. Waiter. Because you're both playing games with me. He pointed at 50, his finger quivering. Waiter. You think you can sit there, say nothing, and scare me into silence? No, I'll say it. I'll tell them what it says. The room leaned in. The smell of seared beef and spilled wine felt distant now, drowned by the raw tension thick enough to choke on. Every ear strained to catch his words. But before the waiter could speak, 50 Cent finally rose to his feet. The motion was slow, deliberate, like the tightening of a noose. His shadow stretched across the table, swallowing the folded note still in the waiter's hand. 50 Cent. Careful. One word, heavy enough to freeze the air. The waiter's breath hitched. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His chest rose and fell rapidly, the weight of 50's gaze pressing him into silence. Jay-Z leaned back, folding his arms, as though stepping aside for the inevitable collision. His expression said it all. This wasn't his fight to stop. This was a lesson to be taught. But the crowd wouldn't let it go. They demanded blood, demanded truth. Diner. Read it out loud. Diner 2. Yeah, what's on the note? The chants built, layered over each other, a mob disguised as wealthy patrons. The waiter's fear twisted into panic, panic into reckless defiance. He shook the paper violently, voice cracking but loud. Waiter. Fine. You all want to know? I'll tell you. The paper was snatched from his hand before the words could leave his mouth. 50 Cent moved faster than anyone thought possible, his grip iron, his presence overwhelming. He didn't tear the note. He didn't hide it. He simply held it in his hand, eyes locked on the trembling waiter. 50 Cent. You don't speak what you don't understand. The crowd erupted in shouts, outrage mixing with curiosity. Phones zoomed in closer, faces lit with the hunger of scandal. The waiter's voice broke into a desperate scream. Waiter. Then what is it? Huh? Why protect it if it's nothing? Jay-Z finally stood. His movement wasn't fast, but it silenced the crowd instantly. His height, his calm authority, commanded the space. He stepped between 50 and the waiter, though not as a shield, more like a judge stepping into his rightful place. Jay-Z, you wanted truth. You think truth makes you powerful, but some truths destroy the hands that hold them. The waiter shook his head, wild-eyed. His arrogance had been replaced with something more dangerous, desperation. Waiter. No, no, you're just protecting him. That's all this is. Protecting your friend, your image, your empire. The crowd murmured again, suspicion turning their fascination into tension. Whose side were they on? Who was lying? Who was hiding what? 50 Cent finally broke the silence, his voice steady, his eyes burning with a kind of intensity that unsettled even Jay-Z. 50 Cent. You're right about one thing. The waiter froze. 50 Cent. This isn't about me. The words sent a ripple through the room. The crowd hushed instantly, their confusion now teetering on the edge of revelation. Jay-Z's gaze flicked toward Curtis, studying him carefully, sensing the shift but not yet revealing the endgame. The waiter stumbled back, shaking his head, fear clawing up his throat. Waiter. Then whose is it? 50 Cent didn't answer. Not yet. His silence, once mistaken for weakness, now radiated like a storm waiting to break. The tension had reached its peak. Every diner leaned forward. Every phone recorded tighter. Every breath in the room was held hostage by the weight of the unsaid. And as Jay-Z's voice cut through the sense, calm but sharp as glass, Jay-Z, he already told you. Choices have consequences. And yours just put you in the middle of something you can't survive. The waiter's knees buckled. The room held its breath. The peak had been reached, and the fall was inevitable. The waiter's trembling hands clutched the empty air where the note had been, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his forehead. The crowd pressed closer, their curiosity now a fever. Dozens of cameras glowed, recording every twitch of his panic, every breath of silence between 50 Cent and Jay-Z. The air was heavy with the smell of spilled red wine, sharp and metallic, mingling with the faint musk of expensive cologne. The restaurant lights seemed harsher now, spotlighting every flaw, every bead of sweat on the waiter's brow. Waiter. If it's not about you, then what is it? His voice cracked like thin ice, desperate, pleading, stripped of all arrogance. 50 Cent unfolded the note slowly, the paper whispering against his fingers. He didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate, cinematic, as if he knew every pair of eyes in the room was chained to his hands. Finally, he placed the note flat on the table where the cameras couldn't see it. His gaze rose, not to the waiter, but to the crowd. His voice came low, steady, but layered with gravity. 50 Cent, this was never your stage. You stepped into something written for someone else. The waiter staggered back a step, confusion deepening. Waiter, you're bluffing. If it's real, then read it out loud. Jay-Z's hand rose slightly, silencing the room with nothing but a gesture. His eyes locked on Curtis, waiting, as though he already knew what was coming. 50 Cent finally looked at the waiter. His voice hardened, sharp and final. 50 Cent, you think humiliation is power, but tonight you humiliated yourself, trying to expose a man who was never hiding. He tapped the note once, the sound sharp against the tablecloth. 50 cent. What you grabbed wasn't mine. It was a letter to this man. He turned the note toward Jay-Z. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Phones tilted higher, desperate to catch a glimpse, though the angle revealed nothing. The waiter's mouth fell open, shock paralyzing him. Jay-Z stepped forward, his calm composure shifting just slightly, enough to reveal weight beneath the surface. He picked up the note, eyes scanning its words, then folded it back with a slow exhale. The silence was unbearable. Every diner leaned forward, every camera zoomed in. Jay-Z's eyes lifted, meeting the waiters. His voice was quiet, but it landed like a hammer. Jay-Z, you had no idea the fire you were playing with. The waiter's knees nearly buckled. He shook his head violently. Waiter, no, no, you're trying to make me the villain. It's just a piece of paper. Tell them what it says. Jay-Z tucked the letter into his jacket, his face unreadable. 50 Cent crossed his arms, his posture towering, unmovable. 50 Cent. Some truths don't belong to the crowd. They belong to the people strong enough to carry them. The crowd reacted with frustration. Some booed, others shouted, demanding clarity. But the uncertainty only fueled the moment, making it burn hotter. The waiter pointed wildly, voice shrill. Waiter. They're hiding something. You all see it. They're protecting each other. Jay-Z cut him off, his voice sharper now. Jay-Z. Protecting? No. Teaching. And you just became the lesson. The words silenced the room. The waiter's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. His earlier bravado, his arrogance, his insults, all had crumbled into silence. He wasn't in control anymore. He wasn't even part of the story. 50 Cent stepped closer, his presence filling the space until the waiter shrank back against a chair, trapped. His voice came low, almost compassionate, yet terrifying in its certainty. 50 Cent. You thought this was about respect, about money, about ego, but the truth is simpler. You judged a man without ever knowing the weight he carried. He leaned in, his breath steady, eyes locked on the trembling waiter. 50 Cent. And tonight, you carried it for a moment. That's why you're shaking. The waiter's lip quivered. His eyes darted to the crowd, searching for sympathy, but all he saw were strangers recording his collapse. Jay-Z placed a hand on 50's shoulder, grounding the moment. His voice softened, though it carried no less power. Jay-Z. Curtis, let him go. He's already finished. 50 Cent straightened, stepping back, his dominance intact, his calm never broken. He looked at the crowd, then back at the waiter, delivering the final line that would echo long after the cameras shut off. 50 Cent. Humiliation isn't power. Control is. And I never lost mine. The words landed like a verdict. The waiter sank into the nearest chair, face pale, trembling uncontrollably. The crowd had turned, not against 50 Cent, not against Jay-Z, but against him. His attempt to embarrass had become the very stage of his downfall. Phones lowered slowly, some capturing the defeated figure slumped under the weight of his own choices. The mystery of the letter would remain unsolved for them, but its impact had already been carved into stone. 50 Cent and Jay-Z exchanged a glance. No words, no nods. Just the silent acknowledgement of men who understood the deeper layers of power, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. And as the waiter buried his face in his hands, the truth crystallized. The real reveal wasn't what was written on the note. The real reveal was that the power of perception had shifted entirely, and 50 Cent hadn't needed to say more than a handful of words to win a war the waiter never should have started. The restaurant didn't return to normal. Not really. The clatter of plates and the low hum of conversation tried to creep back in, but the air still carried the residue of something unforgettable. Every diner knew they hadn't just witnessed a public spat. They'd seen a man stripped bare in front of the world, undone not by fists or shouting, but by silence, restraint, and power. The waiter remained slumped in his chair, head low, shoulders trembling. His tray lay abandoned on the floor, cutlery scattered like fallen weapons. The phones, one by one, lowered. Even the most eager recorders seemed to realize that uploading this moment wouldn't capture its weight. It wasn't a meme. It wasn't a punchline. It was something raw, unsettling, a mirror for everyone watching. Jay-Z stood tall, his hand resting lightly on the back of his chair. His presence was calm again, but there was no mistaking the warning in his earlier words. He glanced at Curtis, a subtle nod between old friends, an acknowledgement that the lesson had been delivered without needing to be explained. The waiter lifted his face finely, red-eyed, broken. His voice was hoarse. "Waiter, why? Why didn't you just tell them what it says? End it, clear it up." 50 Cent regarded him for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. 50 Cent, because some things aren't for the crowd. They're for the ones strong enough to hold them. You weren't. The line landed heavily, not cruel, not mocking, just final. The waiter tried to speak again but stopped when he saw the faces around him. The diners who had once giggled, whispered, even sided with him, now looked at him with quiet disdain. They weren't on his side. They never had been. They were only there for the spectacle, and now that it was over, he was nothing but the man who had lost. Jay-Z's voice cut through softly, carrying the weight of truth without needing volume. Jay-Z, the loudest man in the room is usually the weakest. You proved that tonight. The waiter flinched. No comeback. No words left. 50 Cent dropped a wad of cash into the bill folder, pressing it shut with finality. Not a gesture of arrogance, but of control. He didn't argue about money, didn't flinch at insults. He paid his due and more, walking away untouchable. The two men turned to leave, their silhouettes framed by the warm light spilling across the floor. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path as though royalty were leaving the throne room. Not a word was spoken to stop them. Not a phone dared flash in their faces now. As they reached the door, the waiter called out one last time, voice weak, breaking. "Waiter, so that's it? I'm just nothing?" 50 Cent paused, hand on the door. He didn't look back, but his voice carried across the room with finality. 50 Cent. No, you're a reminder to everyone here. The door opened. Cool night air spilled in, washing over the restaurant like a release. Then the two men stepped out, swallowed by the city's rhythm. Inside, silence lingered. Diners exchanged uneasy glances, each person privately replaying the night in their mind, questioning what they had witnessed. A fight? A humiliation? Or a lesson about the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout? The waiter remained alone at the center, small under the weight of his own choices. The spotlight was gone, but the consequences remained. And as the final glasses clinked again, the moral lay unspoken, etched in the memory of everyone present. Power isn't in the noise. It's in the silence that commands it. The night ended not with applause, not with outrage, but with a lingering image burned into every witness's mind, the image of restraint defeating arrogance, of control dismantling humiliation, of a man who proved that true dominance isn't about crushing your enemy. It's about never letting them touch you in the first place.